Hey, I just wanted to run this one a little more casually. Think about some interesting ideas. Okay. About 16 years ago, I had a really interesting experience with a very close friend of mine. This individual had a parent who was incredibly severely abusive, like lifetime special kind of shit abusive. Like could have made the news abusive, crazy stuff. They moved around a lot. At one point though, this individual's mom ended up purchasing an apartment in Queens. Now, the individual never lived there. She only lived there later on in life when the mom moved out for a while. As a young adult. So she lived there a little while, moved back out when the mom moved back in, and then the mother eventually died, but she died owning this apartment. So I helped her start to clear her mother's crap out of this apartment after she had died. Whenever we would get into the apartment, as we got near the door, there would be physical changes in her. She always had slightly dark circles under her eyes. They would look bruised and black. And very quickly, she would start getting defensive and fearful, starting fights on a regular basis with me. So much so that every time we got in the apartment to help out, she would just pick fight after fight after fight after fight. So eventually, I was like, screw that. I'll only help you if you never come in again, and I do all the heavy lifting. Okay. Why am I telling you about this? Because I got nothing better to do. No. I'm telling you about this because the idea is possession. Right? Now, I'm not necessarily saying her mother's ghost came down like in the movie The Grudge. I was like boogity boogity into her, right? What I am saying though is that is there really a difference? The mere memory of her mother, the smell, whatever it was, created physical and emotional changes and behavioral changes in this individual to such an extent that it's really no different from the idea of possession, right? Her mother's ghost would affect her when it came on. Even just the memory of this individual created these changes. This is an important concept because when we look at how to treat these deep traumatic issues, we have to get to these ideas of really retained patterns, and it's often, quite often, from parents. Not always. Other incidences or issues or traumas can cause this as well. But parents is a really big one, like really prevalent, and that's kind of sad, actually. But how does one treat this? Well, one of the ideas in Chinese medicine is to actually look at concepts of possession. So Chinese medicine, in its way back when, going back 800, 900 years ago, had a basis in the idea of appeasement of ancestral ghosts and demonic possession. There were these individuals, the Wu WU shamans, and they would treat possession. They would treat people's conditions by the appeasement of ancestors and get rid of it that way. This isn't new, or back then it might have been new. This probably wasn't a new concept. I mean, we see it a lot in shamanic practices all over the world. In Chinese medicine, eventually what happened was they created something called the ghost points. The ghost points were 13 different points that all were used to treat possession by ghosts. So, hopefully you could hear me over all that air conditioning I had running. It's hot here in Florida today. So they would treat the ghosts using these ghost points, and these 13 ghost points each had a description of the type of ghost you were dealing with. And traditionally, The needles were, after they were removed, they were ground into the ground to get rid of them. Okay, but again, this may sound a little odd, right? We're treating ghost possession. You might be like, what the? Yeah, okay. But some of it might just be semantics. When we look at the descriptions given of these ghost points, we see other things. We see descriptions of things like schizophrenia. We see the idea of mania. We see depression. We see fibromyalgia. We see rape trauma. Even in one case, I've seen what I used for a patient with Parkinson's disease. So, some of the idea of treating this was to utilize all 13 ghost points at once in a specific pattern in order to clear all the ghosts out of the body. In my opinion, it's a very cumbersome treatment, and it does too much and it's not focused enough. And since we've already talked briefly about using like the dragons and the clearing the Jackie techniques, we've already done a generalized clearing treatment on the patient. This is more focused. And I have used these very often in my practice with really good success. So, one of the techniques is there is a chart, and I have it in front of me, so you gotta take my word for it. It's a chart that uses the person's birth year, and that birth year corresponds to something they call the inherent point. That inherent point is whichever ghost point is basically for you, no matter what you're dealing with. And then you can pick, depending on the sources you talk to, I've set up to 2 other ghost points that you can use for the symptoms that you see in front of you. Okay. You needle the inherent point in a neutral manner, and depending on the time of day, you will either reduce or build up the other point. And it has a very strong effect. It has cleared up conditions that, in my opinion, not much else did, or in my experience, not much else did. I think a really good example is I had a patient who, from a very young age, around the age of, I believe, 5, her uncle started sexually to molest her and her older brother, who was 8. She was repeatedly sexually assaulted by him. When her brother reached the age of 12, he began to sexually assault her as well. This progressed up until she left home to go to college. In college, she discovered drug addiction, and that got her through for many years. Then she decided to get clean. When she decided to get clean in her later adult years, she began to develop what they call non-epileptic psychogenic seizures. Non-epileptic, NEPS, yes. And basically this is recognized by Western medicine as a often stress response. The person has no brainwave activity that would indicate seizure activity, but they do go into what appears to be a grand mal seizure, usually during times of stress. So that's the reason she came to me. I began to treat her utilizing the dragons treatments. As we utilized these, they cleared up the seizures very rapidly, actually. I think it was only 6 treatments and her seizures were gone. However, as we've talked about before, sometimes these stress responses are also coping mechanisms. And what began to happen is that once we got rid of the seizure activity, she began to have regular nightmares about being sexually assaulted. So, why ghost points? Well, one of the ghost points, a point Ren 1, which is on the conception vessel or the Ren vessel, it's down the center of the body. It actually starts right between the anus and, for women, the vagina, for men, the base of the scrotum. It's in your taint, right? So it's Ren 1. And one of the indications for Ren 1 is a demon that comes in the night and rapes you. There we go, rape trauma. So utilizing these ghost points, I began to treat her very simply with Ren 1. Obviously she had to get permission to be comfortable with having a needle in that area, to be traumatic. But within 8 treatments, there was no more dreams. She was able to start to utilize therapy. She did pretty well. So the idea being that we can use various forms of treatment depending on what's going on with the patient that will again reach these deep-rooted traumatic experiences that our body has retained. And it's good to just open up our minds. You got to open your mind to the idea of how you can be treated, what other cultures talked about when maybe they talked about possession by spirits or talked about having a totem animal that might save you from the evil that's hunting you. Now, what's interesting is that research has often shown that perhaps the more westernized concept of psychiatric disorders is actually incredibly unhealthy. The reason I say this is when you think about it, at least the way I kind of perceive it, we've talked a lot about in Western society now the idea of serotonin or dopamine imbalances, and you have depression. You have depression because your serotonin's just off, and it's just kind of like that's what it is. Your system's broken, your serotonin doesn't work right, and you're gonna need to take this pill. And this pill is gonna kind of help, right? They don't really fully help. They help enough to get you through. Some people, they help a lot, but primarily they don't really help that much. But your system's broken, right? You just need this thing to constantly fix it for you. It's not working for you, and the pill comes in. To me, and reading some other researchers, the idea is that creates a helplessness, and we can actually discuss, not today, a different time, Seligman's learned helplessness concepts, which become very important for this. But it creates a helplessness. You are helpless, your system's broken, you gotta take a pill to fix it. On the other hand, what if I told you this was possession by a demon, and you're gonna take some interesting stuff and we're gonna go deep in, and I'm gonna guide you, and we're gonna get your demon, and you're gonna get your totem animal, and together your totem animal and you are gonna kick the crap out of this demon and get rid of it. I don't know about you, but for me, that's a much more attractive concept, right? That empowers me. That makes me feel like I got this handled. I'm gonna get this mother, and I'm gonna beat the hell out of him, I'm gonna drag him out and send him on his way. So the idea of utilizing these other techniques becomes so much more important. It's so much more empowering. And they've shown it over and over again that you can create a feeling of defeat in somebody. And when you create that enough, they can't go anywhere. They can't do anything with it. So utilizing these techniques, these shamanic techniques, which empower us, these ideas of these ghost points. It's not you, it's something else. We're just gonna get rid of it. Like, it's not in you. It's not you that's dysfunctional. It's this concept has attached itself to you, whether you want to call it a ghost or a belief or the memory of your parent or whatever the hell you want to call it. And we're gonna get rid of it. So that's it for today. Just wanted to talk to you about these ghost points and different ideas. If you're a practitioner, explore the idea of the ghost points. There's a number of sources, or you can reach out to me. I always usually link my email down below. And also, if you're into this stuff that I'm telling you, like, subscribe, I don't know, hit some sort of notification bell. Do all the things you're supposed to do on YouTube to make this more popular. That's about it. Have a good one.